Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards. Because we are the best. And we're not wizards. No matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for April. Now, there's issues and there's problems in the garden. It's not to do with kind of like your usual fare. It's not because your grass is too long and it needs cut, or maybe you've got a couple of weeds. There's potentially an infestation of animals. And you need to get it sorted out. And there's only one thing to do, is to maybe get an expert in to help us sort it out. So joining me from Tidbit Games, I've got Dylan McCusker, and he is going to tell me all about his game, which is currently on Kickstarter, which is called Crumbs, which is all about animals in a garden. So there you go. So hello Dylan. Hope you're doing well.
Hello, Richard. I'm doing fine.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Kickstarter's live. It's launched. It's at the time of us chatting, it's about a third of the way there already, which is pretty good going, because you're a first time creator, aren't you?
I am, starting from scratch.
So what's kind of mood like in camp at the moment just now? How are you feeling about things?
I'm feeling pretty confident, hopefully. Pretty hopeful, I would say, actually. I don't really know how to look into the future and project whether it's going to be successful or not based on how it's looked, just because, this is also new to me.
Yeah.
So I can only say based on all the research I've done that it's looking hopeful, but I have to definitely keep working as hard as I can for the next 19 days.
Yeah, you have to continue to kind of make noise. I mean, I don't think Kickstarter hasn't been a press the button and sit back for a little while now. But I guess what we like to do on the show, I guess there's two things we should do. We should say hello to all the lovely people out there who have joined us. Thank you very much for joining us. The reason that we do this is quite simply, it's kind of like Star Trek. It's an ongoing mission. I'm trying to basically speak to as many people as there are that are involved in the tabletop and board game industry, and Dylan was lovely enough to get in contact when he wanted us to have a chat about Crumbs. And the other reason that we do this is because I'm intrigued to know about all these little wooden pieces and this little wooden fence you've got going on, and I want to find out a little bit more. But we do want to find out a little bit more kind of like about yourself. So you want to maybe furnish us? Do you want to go into the shed of the past and bring out the lawnmower of the present, and then we can have a little chat about the trimming of the future? Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into the kind of the tabletop hobby to kind of begin with, really?
Sure. And also, I'm very impressed with all of your lawn-related puns that you've got. I look forward to hearing the rest of them.
I have got a list. I did actually also do the garden, but don't worry, I will be weeding out some of the weaker ones. So
okay.
It'll be fine. There'll be no grass growing on me. But yeah, stop me. Just start talking and talk
just
over
keep
me.
on coming.
Just yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, when I was a kid, I was the youngest I am the youngest of 4 siblings. So I always remember trying to get them to play board games with me, very unsuccessfully. So I do remember very clearly also playing Risk on Facebook back when games used to be a thing on Facebook all the time.
I remember that.
I believe it was called Attack, because it couldn't officially be called Risk, but that sucked up hours and hours of my time.
You're taking me back. I remember Bejeweled on Facebook before it kind of had those horrific ads, and also something, I think it was Farmville or Cityville, and they all used to be browser based, and those were the days, and then all of a sudden they just kind of disappeared and went to mobile. I'm caught in a haze of nostalgia. Yeah, but I mean, so did you stay digital then? I mean, because of the situation with your, let's face it, quite horrific siblings if they refuse to play games with you.
Well, no, not quite. Once I got to college, and there's, of course, so many people surrounding me who are all bored and looking for things to do, sort of opened up the doors. I started to learn about Magic the Gathering when I was a freshman or sophomore in college. But I would say the sort of epiphany I had, that I realized that there was this whole other world of gaming that I had never even thought of. I was visiting a friend, Mark Fingerhut, in Brooklyn, New York, and we played Dominion.
Oh, okay.
And I had never seen anything like Dominion. It seems like, looking back on it now, it seems so simple, but like, from somebody who had only played like Monopoly and Risk and other sort of more basic, simple games like that, I just had never, the whole like deck building mechanic really sort of triggered something in me and like inspired me. Just, it was so drastically different.
It's just finding out games like that. Yeah, they even exist. That you kind of, that is kind of like, is that actually how it can be? I didn't realise it could kind of be like that. So games like Dominion, yeah, I mean, if you've not played it for the first time, it's like, well, what do? Well, you gather up these cards. Okay, so am I looking for pairs? Am I looking for a run of cards here? I mean, where's the numbers? I can't see the numbers in the corners. How are we ever meant to kind of win? Are we playing for money, or are we just playing for fun? And if folk are looking at you shaking their head and saying, you're just collecting the cards and then you're kind of building a deck. Oh, well, I can build a house if you want. It's like, no, that's not the type of the type of game. Is that what kind of got you in the bug? Did that lead you to kind of down the path to say, well, I've got this, I've played this, what else is kind of out there?
Totally. I think I went home and like one of the very first hobby games I bought was probably Dominion, to show everybody, like, look at this thing that I didn't know existed. And then it just sort of grew from there.
And did you go down the route of your Catans of the world and stuff like that, or did you stay within did you look for other deck builders then?
Actually, it's funny, because I had definitely played Catan before that, but it just, something didn't click, because Catan was still sort of the pieces on a board moving around a map. So it didn't like impress me as much. Mm-hmm. It was clean and neat and it worked like very crisply, but it just didn't have that same like aha moment.
Yeah. I think the thing with Catan is Catan's down to your player experience as in who else you play with, because a key part of that game is kind of people kind of trading back and forward in order to kind of get their stuff. That if you play with a group who are kind of quite conniving and don't want to do that, then you're just down to the luck of the dice, and that can make it a really kind of dry game indeed, in terms of excitement and fun, which is kind of what games should be. I mean, have you continued then to kind of build up a collection then?
Oh yeah, I have. I mean, probably compared to some of your previous guests, I don't have as impressive of a collection, but to, general friends and family who walk into my apartment and see, I probably have somewhere around 50 games.
Look, I've got 50 games as well,
Yeah.
I think, if you're getting into the hundreds of games. My question is, where are you going to store them? And secondly, is have you played all of them as well? Because I mean, you know,
trimming down is an art form in of itself.
Yes,
learning how to cut out the weeds.
Are you bringing back gardening puns again?
Absolutely. Let's keep it going.
I think, you know, just pruning the collection. You know, getting rid of the dead wood. You know, looking at the new kind of budding games that you kind of want to play. And, I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of people who, thanks to the joy of Kickstarter, might not consciously be going out and making the decision to go out and buy a game. But for whatever reason, they're getting a knock at the door and somebody's handing them over a parcel kind of every month through stuff that's been kind of fulfilled. And then it's a question of, you know, how quickly can you kind of get it to the table? Out the ones that you have, is there any that you kind of are the ones that your go-to games that, you know, if you've got friends round, or, you know, if you're just, you know, just fancy getting something to the table one night, is there anything that you would get down from the shelf again and again and again?
I mean, the ones I see as like the most like, they're not my favorite, but they're definitely like maybe the most useful or functional of my collection are maybe like Dixit and Anomia. They're just they're so easy to teach. I could teach them in like 30 seconds and people just get it. And then they're not like overbearing. Yeah. Although I would say Anomia does tire people out. Like after a few rounds of Anomia, people are just, they're red faced, steaming. But yeah, those are a couple of the.
What about the ones that you would want yourself? If you could play out of your collection, what are the ones that, you know, if you could just like say, right, I'm going to play this, and there's going to be people there that are willing to play the game with you. What would you kind of like, if you were treating yourself? You know, if you've had a hard day at work and you've come home, you've run yourself a bath, you got relaxed, got some music on in the background, you know, have a lovely dinner, and then say, I'm going to treat myself to a little board game. What game would you pick out of the collection to get to play on the table?
That's a good question. I feel like at the moment that's going to be Dead of Winter. I bought that like 3 years ago and only just started playing it like a couple months ago. But it's so easy to like just get back on the table. Sure, there's a lot of pieces and there's a lot of like setup, but like it plays so smoothly, and the mechanics and theme are just so sort of in sync.
Yes,
it's not too like, and it's also got that like sort of betrayal mechanics going on, but not to a degree that's stressful. It's sort of everybody's working together, having a good go, killing some zombies.
Yeah, it brings. It's one of my favourites personally. So for me, I mean, you know, it's the same with yourself. It doesn't get to the table an awful lot, because if you're teaching new people and just putting out all the components, it's a fairly daunting game once you've laid out all the locations, once you've laid out all the cards, and once you've laid out kind of like the 30 or so zombie standees, the individual standees, the characters, all the chits, and all the kind of the crossroads cards. I mean, when you've got it on a table, it takes up a fair whack. But in terms of playing it and the mechanics, it's, once somebody gets it, it's very, very easy to see somebody do that kind of that flick over where they go from kind of, I'm needing to remember what I should be playing or how I should be playing, to, oh, I get this and this is what I should do. And it's also, it's a fairly, I don't know if you found this, but it's a game that's kind of open to discussion. So that what somebody will say is, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, and they almost like narrate their turn all the way through in order to kind of, I guess, kind of make sure that everybody's kind of working together, which is kind of fun. I mean, is it something you're looking to get to the table as often as possible? Is this kind of like need to get that played more?
Yeah, I guess it really pleasantly surprised me because I'm so sick of zombie stuff just in general.
Yeah.
But I heard such good things about it, so it was sort of like it was tough for me to buy, because I just didn't want to give in to the whole zombie fad that's been going on for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And then even when I did buy it, it took me 2 years to get to playing it. But once I played it, I was just like, it makes sense. All of the good things people had to say about it.
Have you looked at the expansions at all, Dylan? Your the Long Night and I think there's the warring kind of factions expansion as well.
I've looked at them, but it hasn't made it to the table enough to justify an expansion.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've only bought expansions to maybe 3 games out of my collection ever.
All right, okay. See, I'm guilty of not going all in on something, but if something's a decent price, because I usually am quite choosy with what I buy, and if there's a good expansion going at the same time, I'll sometimes pick it up, kind of depending on the price. But again, you've got to I think you've got to know that you're going to get it to the table in order, I guess, to justify the kind of the value.
Along those lines, like as far as getting a good value, I recently heard that Arkham Horror just came out with a 3rd edition, and that's been one of my favorite games that I've never owned. So I looked up the 2nd edition online and found a really good, because I figured the 2nd edition's gonna skyrocket in price pretty soon, as it's unavailable. So I was able to pick up Arkham Horror and the expansion for it for $35.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's
so hopefully that'll make it to the table. But
Did you look at Did you have a look at Plaid Hat's kind of I guess semi kind of follow up to Dead of Winter? I think it was it Gen 7 or something? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was using the Crossroads system. Did you have a look at that? It was kind of like set in space on the spaceship with the same kind of Crossroads system in place as well.
I had noticed it before,
mm-hmm.
and I never looked into it until playing Dead of Winter, and I saw the Crossroads thing.
Yeah.
And that was I realized, they're using this same storytelling card system, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
So I haven't had the chance to play it, but it's definitely something I want to look into based on my experiences with Dead of Winter.
Yeah. Is there anything anything else you're kind of coveting at the moment you'd like to kind of get added to the collection?
Well, I am a huge fan of Dune, and have wanted to have the game for so long. I did some research, found Rex, bought Rex, and then I've played it once, and now they've just announced that they're going to be reprinting Dune, of course, so I'll essentially have 2 copies of the same game, but,
Yeah, I had Rex, and I sold it, and that wasn't because of Rex, it was just because of one of these things that I was kind of looking at games that I was likely to play or maybe not likely to play again, and I think we played Rex one night, and it caused a bit of tension in the group because we were reaching the end, and somebody refused to kind of finish their turn because they knew they were about to lose. So it was kind of like, finish your turn. No, I'm just going to do this. It's like, no, finish your turn. It's kind of like war games, turn your key, sir, turn your key, because you know it's all going to finish off. So I'm interested to see if they play around with the mechanics of it, if they decide, because it was 79, so I was a mere slip of a lad, and yes, I am that old. I was actually 5 when Dune came out. I should have asked for it for Christmas, really, if I'd known then what I know now. But yeah, it's just interesting to see what they do with the mechanics. I mean, with the collection that you've had, with you doing the design side of stuff, did you ever go in and kind of house rule stuff, or use the games that you had and make slight changes to the rules, or, you know, kind of riff off the back of games that you had in order to make your own kind of creations?
I think actually the few games I've done that with was Heroescape.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I made custom armies with like various minis and characters. Just it fit so well into that universe of just like all these different random franchises colliding. That it was always a fun thing to include. That, and maybe I looked into custom races for Twilight Imperium as well.
Wow. That's
but I never successfully incorporated any. I just dreamed about it.
that's going to be a pretty big undertaking if you did decide to introduce that, because as far as I'm aware, it's Twilight Imperium's incredibly crunchy. You know, you know, it's kind of like a good fiber diet in terms of how it kind of plays out. Have you always had a kind of creative side to you? I mean, I know that you're kind of in the creative industries yourself as a job. So have you always been quite creative, quite dabbling away in the background, doing things like that?
Yeah, I would say so. I was in art classes all throughout like middle and art school. I went to an art college for illustration.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And I think what appeals to me about like board game design, which is sort of like a different creative process, but still a creative process, is just it has so many components to it. Not literally like pieces components, but actual like processes that are required to make a complete product.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy, like, I mean, I love drawing and illustrating, but like that coupled with, you know, sort of project managing, and game mechanic design and all these other aspects that are required, is almost more fulfilling to me, I feel like.
So what kind of, what were your first kind of designs then? What kind of stuff did you kind of come up with at the beginning? I mean, was Crumbs the first and only love that you had, or was there other kind of cardboard that you flirted with? That wasn't a good question.
No, that was a great question.
But I'm running with it.
Crumbs was not my first child, but certainly my most complete, I feel like, and maybe marketable.
All right.
However, the first game I ever dabbled with creating from start to finish was Beasts, Bards, and a Bottle of Whoop Ass, which was
Tell me more.
Yeah, it's a long, convoluted title, but it was sort of so I studied abroad in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And when I was there, our final project at the Edinburgh College of Art was to do a team project. There wasn't really any boundaries other than you had to make something with a group of people. And, you know, some of the people there were pretty big board game enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Other people there were pretty big fantasy comic book enthusiasts.
Yeah.
So we combined forces, and they sort of tasked me with the actual gameplay developing. They're like, you're really into board games. How about you do this part of it? And basically, Beasts, Bards, and a Bottle of Whoop Ass was sort of I wouldn't say, not raunchy. Definitely not raunchy, but more like a goofy...
So you're saying that, but that automatically has me thinking that it was a bit raunchy. I mean, this is, you know... It's like when somebody says, I don't mean to cause offence, but, you know...
Yeah.
You've got bad hair, kind of thing, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, was it Edinburgh University you went to then?
Yep, the Edinburgh College of Art, which is
oh right,
part
okay,
of Edinburgh
yeah,
University. Yep.
So were you based in the Grassmarket, that kind of area, or were you out at Teviot?
I was like right across from the Meadows. Can't quite recall where.
Yeah, no. I know
exactly.
I know where that is. Yeah,
6 years, but
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I used to stay in Edinburgh.
It was one of my favorite memories.
I used to stay in Edinburgh, so I know exactly. If you say exactly where you were, I know exactly where the Meadows are. So you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where Pollock Halls is?
Yes. Yep. No, exactly.
Yeah. So me and all the other exchange students were all sort of piled up in Pollock Halls together in like the exchange student area.
Yeah.
Which wasn't quite my favorite because I want to. Yeah, exactly.
Keep you ring fenced and kind of away, just in case you've got diseases and in case you bring culture, because we've got enough culture as it is in Edinburgh. We don't need any of your American culture over here. Thank you very much, Mr. McCusker. But that must have been fun, though.
No, definitely. I would say it was like probably the best decision I made while I was in college was to study abroad.
Yeah.
And also because it just, without it, I may not have dabbled in game design.
So you were doing the gameplay development. Did you end up with a finished product then? Or did it only get so far for the project itself? Yeah,
I'd say we ended up with a very, very clunky finished product. It looked nice because, a bunch of illustration students, sort of final thesis work for that year. Mm-hmm. It plays okay. And I do plan on eventually going back and taking a look and streamlining it. But so I guess it didn't really have as much of a purpose. And now looking back on it, I sort of can see that purpose, and we'll need to like streamline the game to fit that goal, more than just sort of a random compilation of mechanics that sort of work together.
Do you still have it then? I mean, do you still have a copy of the game?
I do. Yep.
Do you? Did you not think about kind of redeveloping it? And then, I mean, you mentioned that you're thinking about it, but I mean, where'd you go from? How'd you get Crumbs then? I mean, where does Crumbs come from? Because that seems to be a completely different style of game. I mean, did you have an epiphany? Were you out in the garden? Do you dress up as a bird? I mean, we need to know.
Well, so at coming back from Edinburgh to the United States in my final year of college, I had started the board game club at college, which we called the Tabletop Cardboard Club. And me and my friend Jackson Berner were talking about games. We were the, heads of this club, and nobody had showed up that night. So we were just sort of tossing ideas back and forth. And he was like, I really want to make a game about pigeons. I don't know, something about... just sort of out of the blue. I sort of agreed with him because, pigeons are very like...
Yeah.
They're so run of the mill.
Yeah.
Nobody actively likes pigeons.
Yeah.
But they're everywhere. And they're kind of like the everyman's bird, if you will. And so I was like, yeah, no, that's great. And he was like, maybe messenger pigeons or something. And I was like, ooh, that could work. What about pigeons fighting over breadcrumbs? Perhaps in my mind, because on the way home from Edinburgh, quick stop in Venice. And
quick stop in Venice. It's the wrong direction. I'd like to point out, right, you may have gone to, university and major as art, but you certainly didn't study geography. You didn't go right to go back to America unless you're going via like Europe and then through Russia and China and then across the other side past Japan until you're heading on to America that way. You went the wrong way, son. You should have turned left instead of turning right. Venice.
I forgot where I was. But yeah,
it's my fault.
In Venice, there was no, it's okay. There was specifically remember birds everywhere, and these dudes with gigantic bags of birdseed throwing them in giant piles to encourage the pigeons. So perhaps it was fresh in my mind, and I was like, pigeons fighting over breadcrumbs. And then we were just like, well, maybe not just restricted to pigeons. Let's get any park animal that's commonly being fed by humans. It's probably not supposed to be fed by humans. And then we pretty quickly just assigned them maybe not specific abilities, but we're like, I don't know, squirrels. What are they? They're kind of like fast and they run up trees. Maybe they're like, they steal shit. And then,
that sounds like a real brainstorming session where somebody kind of maybe spiked your drinks. Or you'd had like, it's like, shall we just stop at the one bag of M&Ms? It's like, nah, man, just open them all. Open them all and just bring me the blue ones. And just let's go crazy here. And you're just sitting there kind of in some kind of sugar daze. And you're like, squirrels. And everyone's like, what? Squirrels, man. They're fast, aren't they? Well, what are you saying? Yeah, they are. Of course they are. A game with squirrels. Okay. What else is fast? Pigeons. Okay. That's where it kind of went from.
Uh-huh. That's not dissimilar to what somebody on Reddit said, that the idea sounded like something hatched over 2 a.m. at Taco Bell. So.
Oh, dear. And obviously we're being arrested for that really bad analogy. So that's that's kind of good.
Did you hear that siren?
I did. And believe me, that's staying in. Because otherwise it ruins the joke. But no, I mean, kind of going forward, so that you had the base idea, but how many kind of iterations of the game did you go through before you kind of had the kind of the final idea?
I would say, I don't know, it's been in development, so to speak, for 3 years or so. Mm-hmm. I think we both sort of we had a million ideas, but we both sort of latched onto this idea just because it seemed like such an accessible theme.
I mean, in all honesty, in terms of the theme, I mean, most people when they're spitballing kind of ideas, they kind of say, well, it's space. Okay. But it's kind of like orcs. But it's not. They're pigs.
Space orcs.
Space pig orcs. Or they say, or it could be an apocalypse. What kind of apocalypse? Well, we could have zombies. Yeah, we could do that. Or it's dystopian nightmare future. So for somebody to say it's a garden, that's fresh.
No, exactly. That's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love sci-fi. Like I mentioned earlier, I love Dune. Mm-hmm. I love fantasy and all that stuff. And some of my favorite games, my favorite game of all time, Twilight Imperium, is like super thick with 2 C's sci-fi. Mm-hmm. But I think we just liked the idea of sort of making a game that was the opposite of that, something that's like super normal. And we just like tossed back a bunch of ideas, most of which haven't been quite worked on yet, but are sort of on the back burner to be looked into once this whole Kickstarter campaign is done. But other sort of like really everyday ideas, like.
But they say that about a lot of some of the kind of the best out of the way films. I mean, that some of the best horror films out there are based around kind of ordinary circumstances. A lot of kind of like the, I mean, I'm not being funny, but one of my favourite comedies of all time, there's a couple, which is, one of them's Hot Fuzz and the other one's Shaun of the Dead. Now, while there's kind of bigger events going around them, they are based around kind of normal, kind of humdrum situations. So you kind of get that familiarity. And then it's usually something different than somebody try to do the kind of the next big, huge, space opera. There's nothing kind of wrong with that. As I say, is what you started off with. I mean, looking at the campaign, I mean, you've got a fair number of different maps, but then you've got obviously your different kind of animals, and then you've got kind of like the kind of the fence and stuff like that. I mean, was this all was this, I mean, how did this kind of come around? I mean, because this is the other thing, for something that you're saying, like, it's quite simple, it's a fairly striking looking piece of art to kind of be sitting on the table that I could imagine if you were demoing it at a convention or a board game store that people would actually kind of walk up and kind of, you say, well, what is this? Tell me more about it.
Yeah. So I guess as we were, spitballing at 2 a.m. At Taco Bell about these ideas, we were trying to figure out, like, well, how do these breadcrumbs appear? Sort of, how are they incorporated into the game? So then dropping was just the most obvious, I guess. So I guess we sort of built the other mechanics around that just because it seemed to be the most fitting. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're dropping anything from any reasonable height, they're going to bounce off the board.
Yeah. So
the first several iterations of this game actually took place in the board game lid. And that was the initial idea, was like, you take the game out of the box, mm-hmm. and you lift the lid off, and then you just pick which map you want. You put it in the top of the box lid, and then you just play directly inside the lid, which seemed like a nice, like, compact, tight-quartered fight. And it worked quite well. But ultimately, after so many playtests, it was a little bit too obscuring. It was too hard to see.
Yeah.
And so my girlfriend, Acacia, actually had the idea of just, you know what, let's just make the fence. Because I had like an image of a fence around, sort of printed on the inside of the game box. And to sort of give that idea. And then I was playing around with the idea of, maybe we make the lid like clear plastic, except there's the printed fence, so it gives that sort of thing.
Yeah. But that's a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of money for sort of the same thing as I get with the actual fences. So she was just like, mm-hmm. Let's just do the fence, because it'll make the gameplay so much smoother. People can see, and it'll like have a nice presence. And so after that, I shopped around in maybe like 5 different hobby train shops, desperately looking for like model fences.
Yeah.
That would fit the board. And I bought a couple, and they didn't quite fit. And then I got fed up, and I bought a 3D printer. So that's how I made those.
What's reception been like in terms of the gameplay? I mean, I take it, did you take it out to kind of play test at the local cons and, the local stores and things like that?
Yeah. So, are you familiar with PAX East?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just demoed it at PAX East. So I've been, this past weekend, so I've been teaching and demoing Crumbs for 8 hours a day for the last 4 days. But the reception's been fantastic, actually. I think, people, like you said, people walk by and they just notice it.
Yeah.
And it gets them a little bit interested. And if we have an open spot, then they try it out. As far as gameplay, I think people really enjoy it. It's great for like, it's totally random at points. Like the crumb drop is ultimately the point distribution, and that can be random.
Yeah.
What people are fighting over sort of the higher chance. So as you take over sections of the board and reinforce your spaces, like in a normal area control game, you're increasing your chances of getting more points.
Yeah, yeah. No, is it like an area control game then? Basically, are you kind of fighting for control then? By controlling certain areas, it gives you the kind of the potential chance of getting kind of more crumbs for your particular faction.
That's exactly, yep. So there's 4 different maps, but they've each got a bunch of different spaces, and each space has a value associated with it. Mm-hmm. And that value sort of determines the value of the space when it comes to game points, because when crumbs fall into the map, they're multiplied by the value of the space.
Oh, right, okay.
So in that sense, and you'll see dice on the board too. Those are the same thing as the printed values on the spaces, but those are dynamic. They can change over the course of the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's an area control game where you're taking armies of critters and you're fighting over spaces on the map because you're trying to take over the most surface area, but you're also trying to sort of balance that with taking over the highest valued spaces.
And does that then affect the kind of the scoring as you play? So is the areas are worth kind of like double crumbs, so you kind of score based on that. And then is there ways to kind of mitigate that? Do you have like cards you can play in order to increase the area that you're in if you happen to be in a worse kind of area, or that allows you to make it easier for you to take control over a much more lucrative area?
Yeah, so there's a few sort of mechanics involved that help that, where each animal's got its own unique powers and abilities that are quite different. Everybody's got the same ultimate goal to win, so it's not asymmetric as far as your winning condition, but it is as far as your strategy to get to the winning condition.
Right, okay.
And so each animal can use their own special abilities to sort of develop a unique strategy to take over the most spaces and ultimately win. There's also the daily buzz cards, which are drawn every turn, not every round. So in a 4-player game, that would be 4 cards being drawn once every turn. And these daily buzz cards are they're like little newspapers, actually, and they represent the goings on in the park that day. And they can have pretty major effects and help both sides, or just sort of create challenges for the players to adapt to.
So I take it as when you were approaching the Kickstarter, were you keeping an open mind in terms of the kind of the rules? Were you still kind of tinkering away with the rules in the background, or when you kind of took it to Kickstarter, were you kind of like, well, this is this developed, this is this ready to go, and we're not going to kind of play around with anything else? That's it. Draw a line under it, get it ready for a Kickstarter, and let's see what happens.
No, I would say the first option A. I think there's always room for improvement in games. It's like I said before, there's so many different aspects to creating a game that I don't think any one of those is ever going to be absolutely perfect. And I think that's why games like Arkham Horror on their 3rd edition and Twilight Imperium is on its 4th edition, because like even a game as finished and polished as the 1st edition of those games eventually is going to need some updating after thousands and thousands of, people playing a game is ultimately going to become a play test, because they're going to have their feedback to, the audience is always right sort of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've also got new mechanics and new ways of doing things as well. I mean, one of the things that I see a lot of games kind of taking advantage of is the ability to use a phone app. I've seen that used with like Descent. I've seen it used with some of the Star Wars games. I've seen it used with a few things, and I think I'm going to pretend like an idiot. I think it is maybe Arkham Horror that has the kind of the app which you can use in gameplay as well. But one of them, again, it's another, I think it's Fantasy Flight game that's using an app in order to kind of enrich the kind of experience. So I think editions change, and they want to change the games and correct rules. I mean, it's not like a video game where you just release a patch. Sometimes if something, you've got to make some fundamental changes, you need to release kind of a new edition. In terms of marketing the game, because this is your first game, to hit Kickstarter, what's that been like in terms of having to deal with kind of like building an audience and kind of engaging with people and things like that? Well,
it's been incredibly busy and exhausting, but definitely fruitful, I would say. I sort of started from scratch not having any other, games released on Kickstarter, and I was sort of between should I or should I not do Crumbs as the first game I try and make on Kickstarter, just because there's so many components involved, and those fences and the way they like fit into slots on the board are just sort of make it expensive to create.
Yeah.
So I think my funding goal is reasonably high for a first time creator. And so I sort of struggled with that. Should I maybe try and make a card game or something that's a bit more easy to fund as far as like what the ultimate funding goal is? But I just made the decision, I guess, to go all in and start with Crumbs, because I felt like it was the most, I guess, exciting maybe, or accessible and fun, and has that presence like you mentioned.
It reminds me of Root. I'm looking at it, and I know folk are going to look and go, yeah, but everything reminds you of Root at the moment, Richard. You got Root in the flipping brain. But it's just the different coloured faction cards and the fact they've got slightly different skills, and that you've got a board and you've got the cutest kind of meeples. We've not spoken about the meeples, but you get kind of animal-shaped meeples, and they're actually animal-shaped, and it is kind of like a little bit of area control and stuff like that, and I'm kind of thinking, there's a couple of similar. Obviously, it's its own game in its own right, but I can see people looking at this and going, this looks interesting. Maybe, cursing themselves that the last kind of cute animal game that they didn't back turned out to be Root, so they're definitely getting themselves involved in kind of this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that'll help or hurt. Actually, I've heard quite a few comparisons to Root, and I totally see it. Yeah. I was debating myself whether or not I should get Root. Totally unrelated to Crumbs. I didn't even make the connection until but I ultimately never got it, and haven't actually gotten the joy of playing it yet. But I definitely see the commonalities. But I think once you play it, like aesthetically, it like up front, it sort of appears the same or similar, just because it's little animals fighting. But I think once you play it, it plays very, very differently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not drawing a direct comparison here. I'm not, I'm no way am I saying like this is like Root. I think in a good way, there's going to be little kind of lights going off in the back of people's heads to say, well, a little asymmetrical kind of area control game. And, people seem to be liking that kind of thing, even though there's been kind of like war games about area control and stuff like that kind of kicking around for ages. I think a lot of people have been quite shocked how much they kind of enjoyed that. With regards to the funding goal, you're going to have, well, not obviously, but stretch goals wise, being a first time creator, have you had to kind of think, well, maybe I'll just try and aim to get the game kind of created, and I'll not worry too much about stretch goals, and if they happen, they kind of happen, kind of thing?
I think that's sort of something that helps and hurts, because I think a lot of people have really drastically different opinions when it comes to that. I think some people love to see stretch goals, and they love to see deluxe editions and stuff like that on Kickstarter. And then other people are like, we just want to use Kickstarter to find and enjoy indie board games.
Yeah,
we don't like all the fluff. And I think for me, coming into this for the first time, just because there's so many different components to making a board game, getting it published, and running a Kickstarter, I didn't want to sort of add too many complications to it. It would be like yet another thing to keep track of.
Yeah.
So I think my ultimate goal is to just sort of get the game funded. I do have a few stretch goals, but I think they're ultimately pretty simple as far as like completing them if they were to be funded.
Is it like quality of life stuff? kind of thicker card and stock and that kind of thing?
I think my very first stretch goal is new art. Not entirely new art, sorry. New rulebook art, because currently the rulebook art is sort of just a slightly varied rulebook cover with different text on top. Let me repeat that. Currently the rulebook cover is just the game box cover, but
right.
With some text switched out. So I think my very first stretch goal, if I were to make 35, would be to get the game artist to make this. In my head, it's really beautiful, like medieval painting, sort of.
Yeah.
I'm not if you're picturing it with me, but those like medieval glorious battle paintings of like cavalry running into other armies of cavalry, smashing into each other.
The Bayeux tapestry or something like that. That kind of oldie worldy.
Yeah, I think that would be super great, and I think that would be super fun to make like a full bleed rulebook cover.
Yeah,
and that's just that doesn't add any production cost to me. If I make that stretch goal, then I get to pay the artist to do the art, but it doesn't cost me any more to manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking at kind of other similarly not too extravagant stretch goals.
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds fun. I mean, it ticks a few boxes in terms of how striking it is, definitely. If you were to give kind of like and you've probably been doing this all weekend after being at PAX East, but if you were to give us like the 1 minute and 37 seconds kind of elevator pitch, what would that be?
Crumbs is a super accessible, easy to teach, and pretty quick to play area control board game for 2 to 4 players, where each player takes on the role of a chipmunk, a duck, a pigeon, or a squirrel, or rather an army of them, and they're fighting over park spaces because Granny's just tossed in a bunch of breadcrumbs, and they're trying to go get those and not let the other critters have them.
What's the price of entry? How much does it cost to get in the door? How much is it going to cost to get the game?
It costs $30 plus $10 shipping for those in the US, $17 for those in the EU and UK.
Okay, cool.
And then a whole plethora of other
rest of world options, basically.
Yeah, rest of world options. I have a couple interesting higher tier pledge options. They're very pricey and they're very limited, but one of them is a custom pet illustration. So the game artist will, if you pledge for this goal, and once it's funded, you submit a picture of your pet, and the game artist will illustrate that pet, and that custom illustration will be printed and framed and sent along with the game to you.
That sounds pretty cool. I like the idea of that. I like the idea of that.
I feel like if people like the way the game looks, it's a good opportunity to get some nice, affordable custom art.
Yeah, and everybody likes getting a picture of their pet as well. It's a kind of like it's a classic gift. It's kind of,
and who knows, maybe their pet will appear in in an expansion pack.
You never ever know. If people have listened along and they want to keep an eye on yourselves, where can we find you on the interweb nets?
I'm on all the social medias, but I would say I'm probably most active on Instagram, and that would be tidbit.games. On Instagram, and then I do have just a website that you could sign up for a newsletter, and that's just tidbitgames.com. But yeah, I would say primarily Instagram is where I do the most updates.
Okay, cool. I mean, we'll obviously take those links, and we'll take the link to the Kickstarter campaign, and we will put them in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, go to the internet, search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us on Facebook, you'll find us on Instagram as well, you'll find our website, which is we'renotwizards.com, you'll find our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. Don't go to Twitter, because Twitter's currently broken for me. I did a thing and it's just wrecked my entire mentions, so just didn't give it a couple of days. I can't even talk about it. It's like, why am I famous for this? And not famous for what I want to be famous for, or well known, or infamous, or whatever. But if you like what you've listened to, you can get in contact with us. You can do what Dylan did, which is you can email us, magic@we'renotwizards.com, if you want to have a chat, or if you want to find out about coming on the show. If you want to support us, there's a couple of things that you can do. We have got a Patreon, but we don't really talk about it, but we are grateful for everybody who helps us with that. But there's a couple of things you can do. Tell other people. Let other people know that we exist. And the second thing is, if you go to your podcast catcher of choice and leave us a rating or a review, that would be fine and dandy as well. Or you can go to Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a subscription, you can drop us a rating, or you can drop us a review. And as we say, if you are going to give us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us 5, because it's in the middle, and it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic. He's a little bit crummy. He's a little bit fancy. He's a little bit animally. It's Mr. Dylan McCusker. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Dylan?
No, absolutely not.
And there are things to say goodbye, so it's a goodbye from Dylan. Say goodbye, Dylan.
Goodbye, everyone.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, and watch out for Granny when she's going into the park, especially if she's taking a bag with her, because there might be some bread in there. And if she decides to be throwing that stuff in the air, there's going to be absolutely large amounts of carnage, which you can check out on Kickstarter just now. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.